Emails from Afar, a chef's culinary adventure around the world. By Mike Sanders.
Chapter 18. Saigon's Priceless Seafood. 1-9, Day 55. Continued. Right now I'm on the train bound for Saigon. This morning's ugly scene began to fade away after the ride from Hoi An, north to Da Nang, which was easy enough. One noteworthy observation along the way was the car's horns. Here in Vietnam, the drivers use their horns constantly, even if they're not needed. In the larger cities, there are so many horns blaring that it melds into one continuous long note. The drive to Da Nang was a perfect example of this unneeded action. As we toured down the mostly paved road, not a single car in sight, in front or behind, the driver just kept the horn on the whole way. Beep, 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 beep. Who the hell are we honking at? We're the only vehicle for miles. Why the hell was he doing that? Was he doing it for the fun of it? Because I have to say, it wasn't. Did he think that maybe we would enjoy it? Because we didn't. Was he trying to keep us safe? From what? From who? We're all alone in the middle of rice paddies. Maybe he was trying to scare the animals so we wouldn't hit one of them and have to stop and eat it. Once on board the train, we found our sleeper berth. We thought we had paid the $20 extra to get a private 2-bunk berth. We bought our tickets through the front desk of the hotel at Hoi An, so maybe they screwed us again. Or maybe it's just a mistake. Or maybe this is what we paid for. Any way you slice it, we're getting pretty sick of paying for something and not getting what we expect. As it turns out, we're sharing a cabin with 2 constantly screaming babies and their inattentive and frequently absent mother. I think I need to lower my already dismal expectations. As we got into bed, I took the upper bunk, as Sarah's short legs won't allow her to get up there. With my long legs and skinny, gangly arms, I can almost step up into the thing. It kind of scares me that 2 small chains that go from the wall to the bed frame support the whole thing, including me. And where are these kids' mother? The train attendant served us some food a few hours into our ride that I can't even write about, it was so horrid. Oh, hold on a tick. Yes, I can. It was putrid, and I ate none of it. It made the food on the train in Thailand look good. Thankfully, we came prepared for such an event. We were a little slow on the uptake about provisioning ourselves for the bus or road trips at first, but now we roll prepared. We've been well aware of the water issue since we first left Japan, and have been using bottled water exclusively for everything except bathing since we landed in Thailand. We make sure to keep our mouths closed when we take a shower, and rinse our toothbrushes with bottled water. We've also learned to always have toilet paper in our backpack. That's very important. And it seems we need to carry food as well. I'm beginning to feel a little like a soldier out in the field. I carry everything I could ever want or need on my back. I figured all I need is a camp shovel and a high-caliber rifle, either of which I would love right now. If these screaming kids live through the night, it's going to be a miracle. The time is 8 p.m. right now, and the train is scheduled to pull into Saigon Station at 5 a.m. 1-10, Day 55. We arrived in Saigon right on time at 5:30 a.m. I didn't sleep much on the train, big surprise. I did, however, get to see the city at night unfolding before my blurry eyes. The streets were active and full of delivery trucks laden down with goods. Scooters driven by young men darted in and out, and neon signs were everywhere. My pupils, dilated by the dark of night, would flash in pain as huge islands of blazing neon rolled past the window. I read a good deal about Saigon on the train, and knew that we had a few hours to kill before any guest houses would open up. As we stepped out of the station, we could see an open grassy area where tables and chairs had been set up. 3 or 4 older women scurried around, serving people tea or coffee from the carts. We sat down and both had a cup of super strong coffee. I just loved the little filter cup and saucer thing. We split a baguette and watched the deep red sunrise. At 6 a.m. we had a taxi take us to a backpacker hostel area. We took a short walk through the neighborhood and discovered that all the places to stay were still closed. A cafe on the main street had just opened up, so we decided to have a little food. Sarah had a chocolate chip pancake, and I had a cheeseburger. I don't know what possessed me to get a cheeseburger at 6:15 in the morning, but I did, and it was good. By 7 a.m. all the hotels had opened up and we quickly found a place at an affordable price. It cost 45,000 dong per night. It's a little over $3. For that we got a small, clean, modern room on the 9th floor with a view of the city. We had about 51 channels on cable, AC, and our own little fridge. How nice is that? For $3 a night I expected a dive, but this place is far from that. As soon as we put our bags down, we took a shower and slept until mid-afternoon. When we got up, we took a short walk around the block looking for some food. After a longer than intended walk, we ended up across the street from our hotel at a new-looking restaurant. It was quite posh in its feeling. Filled with postmodern art, the red sculptures and ebony furniture stood out in high contrast against the bleached hardwood floors. Sarah ordered a hamburger that ended up being the size of a small hubcap, and I had lemongrass chili chicken. The stir-fry had been cooked in a very, very hot wok, as the chicken had been properly deeply browned. It was served in a lemon sauce with lots and lots of chilies. So many, in fact, that it made the dish quite deadly. Don't get me wrong, it was quite tasty, but a little blistering. I tried to talk to the waitress about what was in it and how it was prepared, but she wasn't interested in talking to me whatsoever. The streets here feel a lot like Bangkok to me, minus the friendly atmosphere. It feels more businesslike. I don't see a lot of smiling faces on the streets. I don't hear a lot of laughter. I don't feel very welcome. It's unfortunate because I know from past experiences that the Vietnamese are a very friendly people. But, being an American in Vietnam, I guess I can understand why. Nonetheless, I feel like I'm really not wanted here. 11. Day 57. This morning we got up and had a little breakfast across the street. It was the usual small baguette, laughing cow cheese, and Vietnamese coffee. I've grown quite accustomed to this breakfast. Sometimes I do like to change it up with an orange or a banana. The first thing we did was go to the endless silk shops that are here just around the corner. We both want a sleep sack, which is basically a sleeping bag made of silk. Some of the sheets we have slept on have been pretty questionable, and would like to have an alternative. Sheets are way too bulky and heavy to carry, but a sleep sack can be stuffed in something the size of a hand purse and weighs just ounces. Once inside the shop, we were confronted with bolt after bolt of silk, row upon row with choices that seemed to go on forever. I finally settled on iridescent green and Sarah on dark purple. They took our measurements, asked about our preferences, and then told us they would be ready tomorrow morning. My sack, materials, and labor included, was $7. Now that is a deal. The War Remnants Museum is a memorial complex dedicated to remembering the conflict that tore Vietnam apart between 1951 and 1973. One building contained pictures of all the journalists killed in the war next to a wall with all of their names. I never realized just how dangerous it was to cover that war. Hundreds died, and hundreds more would be wounded. One building had bombs of every sort in it, mines, missiles, rockets, self-propelled grenades, and other implements of destruction. There was even an old guillotine in the back corner, last used by the French in 1961 on captured Viet Cong prisoners. The most gruesome room was called the Agent's Room, a warehouse devoted to the chemicals used during the war like Agent Yellow, Agent Green, Black, Red, and of course, Orange. And let's not forget about the Super Agent class, Super Agent Pink, Super Yellow, and Super Orange. The walls were covered in the picture of the result of their usage. Defoliated jungle, yellowish and withered rice paddies, dead animals, and most horrifying of all, deformed infants and children. Each picture had a plaque containing a small statement about its significance. The last exhibit in the hall was completely stomach-turning. Back by the exit door were two large glass jars, each containing preserved two-headed babies in yellow formaldehyde. Their bodies were twisted and confused almost beyond recognition, with all four mouths having ghastly, hideous snarls. When we left the last room, we felt pretty sick and needed to sit. The giant banyan tree in the middle of the courtyard was ringed by concrete benches, so it offered a place to sit in the shade. Now, out of the sun, with a cool bottle of water, we began to refresh quickly. I had an interesting experience with a man sitting next to me. He was selling books about the war and such. Feeling a little dazed by the gruesome sights that still filled my mind, I didn't think of the polite thing, which was to introduce myself. I heard, "Hello, what's your name?" Still dazed, I turned to the right, stuck out my hand, looked him in the eye and said, "My name's Mike." He smiled and said his name was Pran. As he did, he raised his right hand to shake mine. I grabbed it and instantly realized that I wasn't holding a hand, but the stump of an arm. In my mind, I instantly freaked out. I wanted to go running and screaming, feeling ultimately grossed out by the surprise. But you can't do that. You have to tough it out and shake that thing. It would be rude of me to look disgusted by this unexpected turn of events. I don't want to hurt the guy's feelings, for God's sakes. He's extending his hand in friendship. Well, okay, his stump in friendship to me. Having an arm stump unexpectedly put into your hand is a little bit shocking, to say the least. Now, I don't want to be accused of plagiarizing anyone, so I have to give credit where credit is due here. I love George Carlin. His insights and humor are second to none. He has a bit about shaking a guy's hand and then realizing he only has 3 fingers, and the ensuing freak-out reaction. As a kid, I memorized all of his albums. In that fraction of a second, I could hear his unique scream inside my head, as I instantly realized I was living that particular scenario. So thanks, George. Your screams will forever live in my head. The next place on the agenda was the National Historic Museum of Vietnam. Besides keeping the record of going to all the national museums in each country so far, why not? I wanted to go to this particular museum because of its famed water puppet theater. This uniquely Vietnamese art form is only performed in 2 places in the country, one in Hanoi and one here in Saigon, and is world-renowned. Unfortunately, the museum was closed for lunch when we arrived, so we decided we should do the same and took a short walk to find a place to eat. After a few blocks, we came across this unbelievably cool place. It looked like a small jungle village of interconnected bungalows, not a restaurant. With a thatched roof and no real walls to speak of, it was just a big open area with something like bamboo screening blocking the busy street. Along the other side, at intervals of 10 feet or so, were large concrete tanks. Standing 4 feet off the ground, they looked like giant bathtubs to me. Each one of them had been filled with a different form of fish or seafood. Sea bass, lobsters, crabs, shellfish of all sorts, perch, snapper, octopus, squid, eels, flatfish, all of them swimming around vigorously. When you order your fish, they come over to the fish and take it out of the tank and then take it to the kitchen. You can't get any fresher unless you're eating it alive. Along both sides of the walls, in between the tanks and the bamboo screens, were large ferns, elephant ears, palms, and various sorts of interspersed climbing vines. The most interesting part of the place to me was the roof. Outside, along the crest of the thick thatched roof, there were small pipes with fire sprinklers strategically placed that continuously generated a fine mist. With all the water, mist, and foliage, the temperature inside the restaurant was a good 20 degrees cooler than outside. As soon as we sat down, we began to feel better. We looked at the menu, which was more like a price per pound listing than a listing of dishes. All the different kinds of seafood were listed there. The first thing that caught our eye was the prawn special. 1 kilo of jumbo shrimp for 35,000 dong. That's something like 2.2 pounds of prawns for $2.05. Now that is a smoking deal. 2 pounds is a lot of shrimp for one person. So what do? We ordered 1 for each of us, for a total of 4.5 pounds of prawns. How often do we gorge ourselves on seafood for less than $5, right? We ordered, and just like Pavlov's dog, we sat and anxiously drooled our time away. When it arrived, we each got a white porcelain bowl the size of a soup tureen, filled to the rim with huge, bright pink prawns. Not as big as the gigantic prawn I had in Hue, but giant nonetheless. The tureens were completely packed with them. We were both amazed at the abundance. The prawns had been poached in a flavorful broth that had a hint of Chinese anise. The broth was rich, reddish, with small pieces of aromatics and herbs like ginger and kaffir lime leaf. These little gems of the sea were served with a basket of small baguettes and a bucket for the shelves. We tore into the meal with all of the abandon of an alcoholic in a brewery. We just went nuts. I savored the meal like none other. The prawns were sweet, juicy, succulent, spicy, and the bread was just as good as the prawns after soaking in the broth. We really did enjoy every bite. Amazingly, at the end, we were not as full as we thought we would be. We both had shied away from the bread and just eaten the prawns. Once the heads and shells were off, we were left with about half of what we started with. Now, seeing as how we still had a little room, we pondered the idea of a possible dessert. As we did, the waiter came over and removed our buckets and replaced them with a large bowl of steaming green broth. It had paper-thin slices of citrus and ginger floating in it. The steam's bouquet was heavy with lime and something floral. It woke the senses quickly. Kind of like smelling salts do, but in a pleasant way. I pondered the desserts one more time. I couldn't make up my mind between the coconut or lime sorbet. I picked up the menu to glance at it briefly, and, as I set it back down again, I saw Sarah take a big spoonful of the broth into her mouth. I didn't have a chance to say anything before she had swallowed. A look of puzzlement came over her face, then she shrugged her shoulders. "It doesn't taste like much. Maybe a little ginger. What gives?" she said. As I glanced around, I could see a few people quietly laughing to themselves. I leaned over and quietly whispered that I wasn't surprised to hear that it was rather bland in flavor, as it was the finger bowl. It was intended to clean the hands after the meal, not be the last course of the meal. She looked around, turned 3 shades of red, and started laughing. She realized that other people had noticed too, and that they were laughing as well. "Oops. Don't drink the finger bowl, my love. Priceless. Just priceless." We still had some time to kill before the museum opened, so it seemed the best thing to do was to get a dessert and take our time about it. And what's the best thing for dessert after 2 pounds of prawns? Another smoking deal of $2 per crab. Excellent, crab for dessert. 4 huge stone crabs came just like the prawn, in a rich red broth, served in a tureen with a small bucket of shells and a basket of bread. If the prawns were good, the crab was out of this world. We savored every delicate bite. I helped Sarah crack a few of hers. By the end, we were stuffed just like pigs. I felt a little like I was in the famous Monty Python skit from The Meaning of Life, where the man eats so much and then explodes from 1 wafer-thin mint. It was the most seafood I could have possibly consumed. It was also the best seafood I've ever had. I have to try to come up with that broth recipe somehow. It made the meal. When it was time to go, we gathered up our stuff and our wits and headed to the cashier. When she rang up the bill, we were both jerked back into our Vietnamese reality very quickly. The bill was 64,000 dong, a little over $50. Feeling screwed, but with little recourse available to us, we reluctantly paid and went on our way. Still, I must admit that it was one hell of a meal for only $55, but I feel like I got scammed again. After lunch, we waddled our way to the museum, which was only about 10 blocks away. It's a large complex of colonial mansion buildings that houses relics from Vietnam's past, going from the ancient to the modern. But the reason we came was to witness the uniquely Vietnamese art form, water puppet theater. Water is everything here in Vietnam, with the rains, rice paddies, oceans, rivers, but I had no idea that the connection ran so deep. Water puppet theater pays homage to water and Vietnam's long history together. 112, Day 58. Goodbye, Vietnam! We are leaving tomorrow morning for the capital of Cambodia, Phnom Penh, on a bus. We spent the day resting and doing a little shopping. We went back to the silk shop and picked up our sleep sacks. I absolutely love mine. Now I don't have to worry about if and when the last time the sheets in our hotel had been changed. Our route tomorrow will take us through the border town of Cao Tre, then on to Phnom Penh. We are planning on staying in Phnom Penh for a few days, then we will head north to Angkor. We're glad we came to Vietnam, but it's been a trying 2 weeks. Sometimes I have to remind myself why we are doing this in the first place. It's for the experiences, and not all experiences can be fantastic. Vietnam hasn't been all bad. We got to meet Dave and Elaine around the fire in the deep fog at the Lao border. We crossed the lush jungle-covered Annamese Mountains in northern Vietnam, but we left a significant part of our bus hanging on a boulder. We visited the dark concrete monolith of Vinh City. We got to walk around the grounds of the forbidden Purple City and ponder its lost treasures. The crazy vast market of Hue, and the day trip up the Perfume River where we were charged for everything, including the toilet, stands out as fabulous days as well. And of course, Cow Lao and the White Rose, the two scrumptious sisters of Hoi An. Walking around the foreign district in Hoi An was remarkable, and the prawns and crabs we had before the water puppet theater, all great memories, even if some of them aren't the most pleasant. Time to go. The adventure continues.